Boxing built on what a successful 2023 was with another good year in 2024, as we saw some of the best fighters in the sport back in the ring. We saw some great fighters really make a name for themselves even more in 2024. And we just saw boxing produce some of the biggest sports nights in the country throughout the year. As let's take time to go back and recap some of 2024 and the best fights with what the best fighters did, while also taking a look forward, seeing what 2025 might have in store for us boxing fans. But first, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, comment below. What was your favorite moment of 2024? Make sure you subscribe here to the Never Drop podcast, as I got all your boxing content coming to you here in 2025. Hope you are having a great holiday season and happy new year. Let's go back. First, let's start off with the biggest fight to begin 2024. This was Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia, a fight that happened in April, but I feel like we're still talking about it to this day, not just because of the result, but because of the buildup, because of what happened in the ring, and then, of course, what has happened afterwards out of the ring. This fight, I feel like it's still one of the most discussed topics in boxing. But first, let's get talking about the fight itself. Ryan Garcia defeated Devin Haney, knocking him down three times in the process at the time by a majority decision. A fight that, going into it personally, I didn't think Ryan Garcia was going to even make it to fight night. I was at the press conference in LA. I immediately told everyone this fight does not make it to April. I believe that was the end of February, beginning of March. I said, no, no way. And a lot of people were with me. A lot of people did not think Ryan Garcia was making it to fight night. If you remember, he was acting insane. Just at that press conference, a fan said something. He spazzed out and said, "Come down here, I'll beat you up." That was probably the lightest thing he might have said that day, as he went on Twitter rants, a lot of just disgusting things he said. And a lot of people were like, "No, we don't really care about this fight. Devin Haney is gonna do what he does. He's gonna outbox him. Ryan Garcia, just it doesn't look like he's in the mode for fighting." And we've learned throughout the stories, I don't think he was. Rumors have been he was 15 pounds overweight going into the week of the fight. He's able to cut it down all the way. He's 3.2 pounds overweight. Him and Devin Haney have a bet 500,000 for every pound. Ryan is overweight. Devin said, "Oh, pay me 1.5," settled on 600,000. A decision that a lot of people look back on and say, should have canceled it right there, or should have had a strict rehydration clause the next day. I think a majority of the reason Devin didn't do that is because he did see the backlash Tank had when he fought Ryan Garcia and had a rehydration clause. So that's my opinion as why the fight continued. Then you get to fight night the next night. Ryan Garcia almost knocks Devin Haney down in the first round. Within the first 45 seconds, lands the trademark left hook on Devin Haney. Devin Haney stumbles and just really never fully recovers as he gets knocked down three times. And props to him, Haney was able to get up, but all three times did not look good. And honestly, it probably should have been stopped, or he should have had more knockdowns, as Harvey Dock, the ref, was allowing him to call stay up, stay in the fight, was calling slips, saying no, it wasn't a knockdown, as a slip. So Devin Haney comes out of there with the L, his first L. And then 2 weeks later, what do we find out? Ryan Garcia has had Ostrin type of steroid in a system. Granted, it was a very small amount, but it was petitioned. The fight was taken back from a win in Ryan Garcia's favor and a loss in Devin Haney's, flipped to be a no contest for both. Devin Haney still is undefeated. Ryan Garcia's win is taken away. Ryan Garcia also suspended for a year, so he won't get back in action officially until April 2025, coming up in a few months. We don't know if that's going to be a rematch. Personally, I think that makes the most sense. That rematch is going to be great money, great business. I think both sides. And again, if you're Devin Haney, he went in there with a bad game plan, in my opinion. He should have boxed, but we're not going to get into those specifics right now. You can go back and listen to what I said at the moment. He should have boxed. I think that's what he would do in the rematch. But what thing Devin Haney has done in that time, he's turned himself into a really big villain in boxing, but not a villain like Floyd Mayweather Jr., a villain that people all over boxing are this kid's a crybaby. He decided to sue Brian Garcia. That lawsuit is still going on. There's still not an answer to that as of right now. We don't know how that is going to resolve itself. But even former boxers were like, Devin, you just don't do that. You don't go and sue somebody after a boxing fight. I know the dude had steroids in his system, but you go and get your get back. Fans have really turned against Devin. And it's unfortunate because you would have thought Devin was the one cheating in the fight, the way people have turned against him. But between his father and himself, just the way they've moved in the media, a lot of people have turned their back on Devin Haney. And I think if you want to do the rematch, I think that plays perfectly because Ryan Garcia has that ultra fan base. Devin Haney turns into a villain. A lot of people will tune in not only to see Devin Haney get knocked out or lose again, but they might tune in to see whether or not Devin Haney can get his revenge, see if the steroids really played a factor. So I think that rematch is a no-brainer. I wish Devin would have got back in the ring this year, but you know what? That's not the worst idea if he didn't. I would like him to have a tune-up fight before the Ryan Garcia fight because it can be a little traumatizing getting knocked down like he was. He was at the top of the world after beating Lomachenko and Regis Prograis. I'd like Devin Haney to get back in the ring before he fights Ryan Garcia, but that's a rematch that is going to do ridiculous numbers. Next, let's look at the two fighters that I personally consider the faces of boxing. One, Canelo Alvarez, and two, Gervonta Tank Davis. First, looking at Canelo, because he fought twice this year. First, a unanimous decision win over Jaime Munguia, then a unanimous decision win over Edgar Berlanga. In the fight against Munguia, it was really a fight that you could see it was interesting for Canelo because in the past he had said, I'm not fighting any more Mexicans. I want to prop up the country of Mexico, his home country, of course, by not splitting the fan base, not beating any young Mexican prospects. But he kind of ran out of choices and decided, okay, the young Jaime Munguia. Canelo knocks him down in the fourth round, but really carries him throughout the fight. After he knocked Munguia down, it looked like he could get whatever he wanted, but decided, hey, I'm not going to send this kid out through a knockout because I don't want to ruin this kid's career. That's personally what I was thinking, as it looked like there was many times he could have got him out of there. I believe the 10th round in particular was a round that he looked like Munguia was shot or two away from being on the ground, being on the canvas, and Canelo pulled back, took himself a few seconds, let Munguia recover for a second, and then continued on. Just little things to continue to keep Munguia in the fight. This comes after, hey, Canelo, we want to see you against either Benavidez. That's personally my opinion. I want to, my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, but the fight I want to see, or a lot of people will take a Terrence Bud Crawford fight. Terrence Crawford, also a name you could put at the top, whether when it comes to faces of boxing. We'll get to that in Crawford's year in a second. But instead of that, in September, Canelo decided to take on Edgar Berlanga, knocked him down in the third round, couldn't get Berlanga out. And again, people are saying, Canelo, you're great, but you're at a roadblock now. There's not too many 168 options for you, but there's two legit options the fans want to see. One being Benavidez and one being Crawford. Both would do ridiculous numbers. You would make an absurd amount of money. Are you going to continue to do what you want to do and pick your own opponents? And you're going to make easy money, but these are going to be easy wins. And potentially down the line, fans will say, hey, he didn't give us what we really wanted to see in these fights against these top tier guys at the end because Canelo's had a great career and he's fought the greats, but at the end of his career, he didn't do that. Or are you going to say, all right, let's give the fans what they want to see and make the best fights in boxing? Because whether that means going up to 75 for fighting Benavidez, or I believe Benavidez would come back down to 68. That's a top three fight boxing fans want to see. And then Terrence Bud Crawford, a fight against him, that draws in everybody. Super fans, casual fans. That does an absurd amount of money. And I believe Turkey Al Sheikh would be involved. So the promotion for that one would be incredible as well. Canelo's at a roadblock, and we don't know what his plans are for May of 2025. It seems like the door's cracked open a little bit for Canelo versus Crawford. I think it's definitely a lot more likely we would get Canelo versus Crawford than Canelo versus Benavidez, but we're going to have to wait and see. I mentioned Gervonta Tank Davis, the other face of boxing. He had one fight this year, unfortunate because he was going to fight Lamont Roach at the end of December. That fight was postponed March 1st. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I will be there. I covered the press conference in New York just a few weeks ago. So if you want to be up to date with that coverage, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But Tank Davis fought Frank Martin, a fight I really liked. It's unfortunate a lot of people in the sport are downplaying that win now that Tank got the KO. A lot of people are saying Frank Martin didn't have many fights, which is true. Started boxing late, which is true. But one thing was when Frank Martin versus Shakur Stevenson was announced, a lot of people loved that fight. Those same people are discrediting Tank Davis for the win. Granted, I understand we want to see Tank Davis against the elites, Lomachenko's, Shakur Stevenson, and these other top guys. If he goes to 40, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia rematch potentially. But when you fight somebody and you knock them out like Tank Davis does, a lot of it is discredited, and people are going to say, "Hey, he fights nobody's." When in fact, if you go back and look at Tank Davis's resume, you will see he has a very good resume. We're not going to do that this video, but that's just something that has kind of gotten on my nerves a little bit because I do think Frank Martin was a good win. If Frank Martin goes out in the next three fights and is not good at all, you know what? We can have this conversation of maybe Frank Martin wasn't hyped up to be what he was. But as of now, I still think that is a very legitimate win for Gervonta Tank Davis. And he did it, eighth round KO, hit him with an uppercut, finished it off with a left brick hand, Tank Davis style, backflip off the top rope. There's not much to say for this guy other than we need to see him against the top guys. I'm all for that. Again, don't think because I'm saying, oh, I love the Frank Martin fight. No, I want to see him against Loma, which he was in negotiations with, and Loma said, I don't know if I'm retiring. So props to Tank. You can't blame Tank for that one. Or Shakur Stevenson, which I think we will see him fight Shakur Stevenson. I know Tank said 2025, I'm retiring afterwards. Personally, I don't believe that's true, but even if it is, I think he does fight Shakur Stevenson. I think there's no way those two don't make the fight. It wasn't going to be next. It wasn't going to be after his Frank Martin fight because Shakur just signed Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn's not making a Tank Davis fight as the first fight. That's just bad business if he does so. So for people saying either or duck, hey, at the end of the day, that fight wasn't happening for both sides. Would I like to see Tank fight someone maybe other than Lamont Roach? Yeah, I think Lamont Roach is a good fighter, but he was a champion at 130 coming up. Hey, 35. I wish Keyshawn Davis had his fight, his breakout fight earlier. Then maybe we could have gotten that. But Keyshawn broke out a little too late. The Roach fight was already made. So maybe we settle for Keyshawn versus Gervonta Davis, Davis versus Davis in 2025. I think that could be a legitimate precursor to Shakur Stevenson. I think Tank could go, hey, I'm taking everybody out in Shakur's camp because him and Keyshawn Davis are like this, Shakur and Keyshawn. I think that's a legitimate option. But for Tank, I'm interested. Of course, I have him winning March 1st against Lamont Roach, but how much does he still have in the tank? You always hear fighters talk about retiring, and sometimes they get in the ring and their mind's already on retirement, and you can see it in their performances. So does Tank Davis still have it in him? Obviously, in 2024, he gave us another highlight reel knockout, so I'm expecting nothing less than another highlight reel knockout. But we'll have to see come March 1st. Tank Davis, he said he wants to fight three times in 2025. Let's see if he can make that happen. You mentioned Terence Crawford earlier. He had a unanimous decision against Israel Madrimov, first ever Riyadh season card on the U.S. soil, big LA card. It was Crawford's first fight at 54. He didn't look great. Granted, Madrimov is an awkward fighter. Crawford didn't look great. I didn't like he was off for a year, basically, since he had fought Spence. Heck, I don't like that Spence has been off for a year and a half. You're talking about coming back from Fundora. I hate these long breaks for fighters, but sometimes it's the business. But for Crawford, came back, didn't look great. Again, this dude has moved up in a lot of weight classes, going to 54. Getting a belt at 54 is just another notch on his legacy. You can't say much about the guy other than he is an all-time great, undisputed 40, 47. Hey, if things pan out a certain way, that could happen at 54, but I hope he only stops at 54. While I do would like to see Canelo versus Crawford, going up to 68, I just don't see it. I didn't think he had too much power at 54. 60, I don't think he could. But that's the interesting thing because Crawford seems destined that he only wants a fight against Canelo. Even hinted at, hey, I'm fine with my career. I have enough money. I can retire if I want to if I don't get the Canelo fight. So this is a big year. I think if there is no Canelo versus Crawford, I think Crawford will fight one more time. I don't know against who. I think he'd fight one more time and retire if we don't get a Canelo fight. So if you're a fan of Terrence Bud Crawford, I think you should be looking at 2025 as the year of saying, hey, I got to enjoy this while it lasts because this might be one of, if not the last time I see Terrence Crawford in the ring. But going back to 2024, it was a good event in LA. It was broadcast and promoted as the best card of all time in boxing. I don't think that was the case, mainly because it was going to be Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu on the undercard. That got canceled thanks to Tim Tszyu's cut he sustained against Fundora earlier in the year, not healing in time. That would have helped it, but all in all, it was a good night of boxing. I'm looking forward to seeing Riyadh season having cards not just in Saudi Arabia, but across the country, and seeing if we can have some more here in the US. But for Crawford, I think it's Canelo or bust. Speaking of Riyadh season, we can't not talk about boxing without the two big undisputed fights. We'll talk about this fight because we'll get the rematch in 2025. Beterbiev versus Bivol. Artur Beterbiev got the majority decision against Dmitry Bivol, which I thought was the correct decision. I had it 7-5 in Beterbiev's favor. Of course, Beterbiev, before going into the fight, had knocked out all of his opponents. Didn't do it this time. And I wasn't surprised. Obviously, you want to see the knockout, but when you have these two elite fighters going up against each other, hey, defense is going to play a huge factor in the fight, and it did. Beterbiev is able to get the win, but I don't want to talk about that too much because it is just in a month and a half, 2 months, we're going to see it all over again. I'm looking forward to the rematch, and I think, hey, whoever wins that fight gets the winner of Benavidez versus Morrell. 175 is looking great right now. As we're going to go to the other undisputed fights. I say fights because there was a rematch that just happened the other week. I'm talking about Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury. Finally, these two got in the ring and they did not disappoint as we saw the two heavyweights. For years, people said this isn't going to happen. This is not going to happen. But Turkey Al Sheikh, props to him. He got in there, and it seemed like instantly he wanted this fight to happen. Out of all the fights that could happen, he wanted Usyk versus Fury. Well, he got it. First fight, Usyk wins by a split decision in May. One of the contenders for fight of the year, a really good fight. Usyk almost took out Fury back in the ninth round. I don't know how Fury stayed in the fight. Granted, the ref did give him a lot of leeway. I think he should have called it, but luckily it didn't come back to haunt the result of the fight. The right man won that night. And then they said, let's run it back. There was a rematch clause, so we all knew there was going to be two of them. Props to them for getting back in the ring in December. They fought in May, got in the ring back in December for the rematch. They didn't push it back, didn't anything. Hey, we're men to our words. Rematch happens. I think Usyk wins this one pretty handily. I had it 8-4, like the judges had it. It was a unanimous decision. Usyk, he cements himself as an all-time great, undisputed at cruiser and heavyweight. As now we look at the state of the heavyweight division. This one wasn't for undisputed because Daniel Dubois has won the belt, so stripped off of Usyk right after the first fight. So it looks like we might get a Dubois versus Usyk rematch, which I'm looking forward to because if you remember when they first fought, there was a very controversial low blow that some might say was not a low blow. Personally, I think it was on the belt line that knocked Usyk down, and Usyk was saying, "Hey, it's a low blow," and they called it a low blow. But I and a lot of other people think it might have been a clean body shot, and it would have been the 10 count, and Dubois would have beat Usyk at that time. So it looks like we'll get that rematch. And with Tyson Fury, I think for him, it's either retire, which again, he has the right to do. He's made a lot of money coming back after his cocaine addiction and everything he went through. Props to him. Props to him and everything. He gave us the great trilogy with Wilder. He gave us this dynamic two fights with Usyk. For Fury, hey, if you want to retire, go ahead. Or you can give us a fight that we've wanted for a long time, and that's Anthony Joshua, a fight in Britain, in London, at Wembley Stadium, at somewhere. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think people would, yeah. I mean, just thinking about that right now, even looking back at Joshua versus Dubois, one of the top upsets of the year, packed stadium, over 90,000 people there. Fury versus Joshua would be a spectacle. Well, I know, I mean, there's so many things for boxing that happened in 2024. I just want to cover some of, in my opinion, the top things that did happen. And I know you might be sitting here saying, hey, Luke, there's a lot of things that happened you didn't talk about. Yes, I know. Rising fighters like Bam Rodriguez, Virgil Ortiz. I'm looking forward to Virgil Ortiz. We'll talk about that right now, actually. Let's get into 2025 and the February 22nd loaded card in Riyadh season. I mentioned Beterbiev versus Bivol. We're getting the rematch there. We're getting Virgil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov. I think that's going to be a great fight. Shakur Stevenson fighting Kid Austin. Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. I think this is a better card than the one hyped up in LA for Terrence Crawford. I think this has to be in the discussion for one of the best cards of all time. I think this is going to be an action-packed full day of boxing, not a night, but a full day of boxing. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to Riyadh season continuing to see what they do because the other promotional companies, what their situations are. PBC, we knew it was going to be a transition year from 2023 where they owned boxing. They had all the big fights in boxing, biggest fights. There was a lot of big fights, but the biggest fights, PBC had them 2023. Showtime cancels everything when it comes to sports. They shift over to Amazon Prime. Really, really slow year PBC had. Let's see what they do in 2025 because this is a make or break year for them. Are they going to get their fighters back in the ring at a consistent rate? Because a lot of their fighters are on these long layoffs in between fights, and it's just not sustainable. So let's see what PBC does. It's a make or break year for them in 2025 in Top Rank. Their deal with ESPN runs out in August. Do they go into the fold of going under a DAZN TV partnership? Does Turkey come in and swoop them in? Does Turkey come in and swoop Top Rank out and make them a part of Riyadh and his own promotional company doing stuff with them? It's interesting. Are all these boxing promotions going to be headed under this one guy, Turkey Al Sheikh, who's really come in and just thrown money? Hey, I don't know. It's a question we're going to have to see literally play out in real time in 2025. But right now, we got a fantastic slate. I mentioned the 22 card, the February 22nd card. Additionally, February 1st, David Benavidez versus David Morrell. I think that will be a top three fight of the year. I'm calling that right now. I'm extremely happy about that fight. Winner, it's Beterbiev versus Bivol. Winner of that rematch. I'm just putting that in the air right now. I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, I think the fight everyone does want to see, Gervonta Davis versus Shakur Stevenson. Do we get that in late 2025? Personally, I think so, but only time will tell. Again, this isn't everything that happened. This isn't even 10% of what happened this year in boxing. I mean, I could talk about this for 2 to 3 hours, everything that happened. These are just some of the highlights I wanted to talk about here on this channel. I want to thank everybody for all the support through 2024. It was an amazing year for the Never Drop podcast. I thank you for everybody who tuned in, who was listening and watching my videos. Thank you. This has been a great time for me just talking boxing. Again, comment below what your favorite fight was, what you want to see. I'm looking forward to continuing to make content in 2025, continuing to preview, break down, talk about fights. It's something I get a lot of joy out of. So I thank you for sticking with me. And let's keep this thing going. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Like this video if you can. I hope you've had a very happy holiday season. And get ready. 2025, I can feel it. It's going to be a very good year for boxing. Make sure if you're a fan, subscribe. Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach. I will be in Brooklyn for that fight, the weigh-in for the fight. If you want to be up to date with all that content, make sure you subscribe and all other boxing content. I got you. Appreciate you for tuning in. That's all I got for you today. Peace. I'm out.